Hello, my name is Taylor Young. I am a software engineer at a consulting company called Launch Consulting Group in Seattle, Washington. I've had a lot of friends come up to me recently and ask me about different ways to get into coding, get into web development. So I wanted to put together a little channel here with some videos on learning some different technology stacks from the ground up. What I wanted to start with is JavaScript, which is my favorite language to code in. Alongside HTML and CSS, it's one of the three core technologies of the World Wide Web. As far as content production, the majority of websites across the internet today employ it, and it's supported by all modern web browsers. JavaScript data types, and specifically string, number, boolean, undefined, null, array, and object. And before we talk about those, we need to talk about variables. And variables are something that you've probably heard of if you've ever taken a math class or an algebra class. And these in JavaScript are basically containers for data values. This is where we're going to store data. In order to declare a variable, you type the keyword var and then the variable name. So let's have a variable name of test. Right now we've just declared a variable called test, and currently this variable has the value of undefined. Now undefined is a data type that we have up here, up in my comments. Undefined is it means a variable has been declared but has not been assigned a value. On the other hand, we have another data type called null. Null is similar to undefined, but it's a little different. Null is an assignment value. It can be assigned to a variable as a representation of no value. So if you want to have a variable that you want to have zero value, you would assign it null. If you want to have a variable, if we've just declared a variable right here, this would be undefined. In order to assign this null, we would go var test equals null. At this point, we've assigned a value to test. Our value is null. So the next JavaScript data type I want to talk about is a string. A string is basically 0 or more characters enclosed in single or double quotation marks. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Var test equals string, and let's just say the word test. This is a string, and this is what's called a string literal. We also have something in JavaScript called a string object, and this is created using the new keyword. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm not going to go over that until we get into objects, which is another data type of JavaScript. Strings are very, very widely used. A lot of times, if you have a database and you're storing information, a lot of times you're going to be using strings to store that information. If you're on a website and you see strings of text that pop up, sometimes those are JavaScript strings that are sent there maybe through alerts or through different pop-ups. It's all strings. The next data type is a number. So let's see. Numbers are declared with no quotes, just a number. So say var test equals 5. So we can actually go over two separate principles here. In this script right here, we are setting test to a string of test. Now a couple lines down, we're resetting the var test to the number 5. So at this point, the variable test equals 5. You also would not need the keyword var in that situation if you're going to reassign a value to it. And so like I said, numbers can be written as decimals or as whole numbers. So you can do 5.2, you can do like 5.2453. You can also do exponents. So you could do 5 exponent to the 23rd, and that would return 5 to the power of 23. So the next JavaScript data type I want to talk to you about is called a boolean. And a boolean is a data type in computer science where represents one of two values, true or false. Very often in programming, you're going to need a data type that you can only have one or two things to say, basically yes or no, on or off, true or false. And this JavaScript has a Boolean data type, and it takes only two values, true or false. So in order to declare a Boolean, we would go var, let's call it test again, equals either true or var test equals false. Very simple. Booleans are also in many other different programming languages. Alright, next up, the next data type I want to go over is called an array. JavaScript arrays are used to store multiple values in a single variable. Using an array literal is definitely the easiest way to declare an array. So let's use test again. Let's use var test, and this is how you declare an array, just like this. Left bracket, right bracket. Within that is where your values go. And so an array is basically you go array name, which is test, and then within that you have your items. So basically item 1, item 2, item 3, and basically as many as you want. And so these items can be any different data type. You could have a Boolean in there, you could have a string in there, you could have undefined in there, you could have a number, you could have an object, you could have another array even. And these items, each of these slots, is what we call an index. So this first index is your 0 index. And indexes are numbered. And that's the way you would actually access an array, is by its index. So if I want to access one of these items, I would go the array name and then the index. So this would be item 1. I forgot to add the 1 there. Item 1. So test, the index 0 of array test is item 1. So right now, item 1 is an undeclared variable. So let's give these variables some data. Var item 1 equals a string called string. Var item 2 equals let's give it a number, 5. Var item 3 equals another array, and within that array let's have a string called string and a number of 3. So we have our array. This is what our array actually contains now. It has the string right here, which is item 1, our number 5, which is item 2, and then our third index right here, which is actually the 2 index, because we start at 0 always for array indexes. So 0 index, 1 index, 2 index. This 2 index is another array, so we have an array within an array. And within that array we have a string and a number. So it can get a little confusing as you get deeper and deeper, and you have arrays nested within arrays, or different objects nested within objects. But it's important to remember that you can keep going. You can store arrays within arrays. You can store objects within objects. An array is actually a special type of object in JavaScript. If we use the type of operator, it will return object. So say we have we write type of test. That's going to return object. Even though this is called an array, it's technically an object in JavaScript. So for our next and final JavaScript data type I want to talk about is the object. And object is, I believe, the most important data type in all of JavaScript. In JavaScript, objects are king. If you understand objects, you're going to be able to understand JavaScript. Pretty much everything in JavaScript is an object. Regular expressions are always objects, arrays are always objects, functions are always objects, and objects are obviously objects. In JavaScript, all values except primitive values are objects. And so primitive values would include strings such as John Doe, just a string literal, number such as the number 3, true, false, which are booleans, or null and undefined. Those are the only things that are not objects in JavaScript. So at its core, an object is a collection of named values, and the easiest way to declare an object is with object literal syntax, and I'm going to show you what that is. Let's get all this stuff out of here and start fresh. So var object equals just like that. That is how you declare an object with object literal syntax. Left curly brace, right curly brace, and within that is where we're going to have our named values. And so let's create our first object property, and that's going to be first name. And let's assign that a string of Taylor. So right now, our object has one property. First name is Taylor. So if we were to write, if we were to say console.log object dot first name, this would log in the console Taylor. So let's add some more properties. You add properties, you separate the properties with a comma. So last name, string young, and then let's say let's make a property called right. And so one thing with objects you can do is you can assign functions to these named values. And so I'm going to assign a function. Let's go function and let's just have a simple function that does console.log write. Okay, so now we've assigned a function to the object property write. So object.write is a function that's going to console.log the string write. So if we were to go down here and if we were to write object.write and then call the function, so that's how you call a function right there, is with the parentheses. If we were to run that, then in the console it would log the word write. And I know I haven't really gotten into functions and using function parameters and whatnot. I wanted to keep this video under 10 minutes or so we could just get into some basic JavaScript data types. The next thing I want to do in the next video is go over some different ways of building functions and how functions work, and also get into some stuff about JavaScript loops. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something.